We begin with a mafia boss named Dante. He has captured a police detective who had been undercover among his men. The detective's cover has been blown, and Dante has no intention of letting him walk away. He orders his female lieutenant to finish the job using a baseball bat. Meanwhile, the detective's partner, Roman, has already infiltrated Dante's hideout. He moves through the lower floor, taking out Dante's men one by one. After clearing the area, he heads upstairs, hoping to rescue his partner, but he arrives too late. His friend is already gone, and Dante has escaped with the rest of his crew. In that moment, Roman knew this was only the beginning. This is the Wrecker. The story then shifts to a man named Tony, a retired Marine who now runs a small auto shop. It seems like just another normal day for him, until a Ferrari suddenly pulls up outside. The driver turns out to be his younger brother, Bobby, who is unemployed but somehow driving an expensive sports car. Tony is confused, but Bobby promises to explain everything inside the car. For now, he just wants Tony to join him for a quick ride. After enough insisting, Tony finally gives in. During the drive, Tony notices several cars tailing them. He asks Bobby if they are his friends, but Bobby only realizes then that something is wrong. Panicked, he slams the accelerator. The chase does not last long, and it ends with a violent crash that knocks both of them unconscious. An hour later, Tony wakes up to find himself face-to-face with Dante's crew. Dante explains that Bobby stole his precious Ferrari and completely wrecked it. As payment, Dante demands compensation worth 100 times the car's value, roughly $28 million. Knowing Tony cannot possibly pay, Dante begins with a game of Russian roulette. He loads a single bullet, points the gun at Tony, and pulls the trigger.
Any last words?
Pull the fucking trigger.
The chamber clicks empty, and Tony survives the test. Despite that, Dante still wants repayment and tells Tony he will work for him instead. Tony agrees, but only if Dante releases both him and Bobby afterward. Dante says Bobby will be freed once Tony completes a few tasks. With no other option, Tony is forced to accept the deal. Tony eventually returns home, and we learn that he has 2 daughters. His wife passed away long ago, leaving him to raise them on his own. One child is still quite young, while the other is already entering adulthood. The next day, Tony visits his close friend Agnes, who owns a bar. He tells her that he is dealing with something serious, but he cannot share the details. All he asks is that she look after his daughters if anything ever happens to him. With that, Tony heads to Dante's base near the border to receive his next assignment. When he arrives, Dante tells him to teach a lesson to a Mexican gang down the road, a group that has been interfering with his operations. An hour later, Tony reaches the gang's hideout. His job is simple: scare them enough that they stop selling drugs in Dante's territory. What Tony does not know is that Roman, the detective, is already watching the same gang from a distance. Tony knocks on the door, storms inside, and quickly takes down the members inside. After securing the area, he warns the gang leader not to push into Dante's territory again, or next time he will not hesitate to end it for good. Later that day, Tony returns to his shop, where he runs into his trusted mechanic, Eduardo. Eduardo notices something is off and asks if Tony is all right. Tony brushes it off and pretends everything is fine. Not long after, Dante calls Tony again. This time he wants Tony to burn down a small drug operation run by a minor gang. The gang is conveniently out of town, leaving only a few people guarding the place. Tony goes there, fights his way through the guards, and finds a few women inside. He tells them to get out immediately before he sets the place ablaze, completing Dante's orders. After finishing the job, Tony stops by Agnes's bar. She presses him for the truth, and Tony finally admits that Bobby's being held hostage by Dante's organization. Hearing Dante's name, Agnes warns Tony to be extremely careful, since everything she has heard suggests Dante is vicious and unpredictable. What Tony does not realize is that Roman has been listening from a distance. Now he knows Bobby is being held by the same man he is hunting. After Tony leaves, Roman approaches Agnes and asks who Tony really is and what his connection is to Dante. Agnes tells him that Tony is simply a friend and that she genuinely does not know the details of his involvement. Meanwhile, Tony returns home and is greeted by his daughters. He apologizes for coming home so late every night, blaming it on long hours at the shop. His older daughter reassures him that she can take care of her younger sister. At the same time, Roman digs deeper into Tony's background. When he checks the records, he finally discovers the truth. Tony is a retired Marine. The next day, Roman shows up at Tony's auto shop. He explains that he once saw Tony fighting a Mexican gang that happened to be one of Dante's rivals. He also overheard talk at Agnes's bar that Tony's brother is being held hostage. With that information, Roman finally pieces it together. Tony is only working for Dante because he is trying to save Bobby. Tony denies everything and pretends Roman must have mistaken him for someone else. At that moment, Tony receives a call from Dante ordering him to come immediately. Tony goes to meet Dante, who gives him a new assignment. This time, Dante wants him to eliminate an accountant. Before agreeing to anything, Tony asks whether Bobby is still safe and how long this forced arrangement will last. Dante assures him that Bobby will remain unharmed as long as Tony continues to obey, and hints that Tony might earn his freedom in about a year. That night, Tony scouts the accountant's home. When he sees the man with his wife and young daughter, something inside Tony refuses to go through with it. He knows what it means to have a family and cannot bring himself to destroy someone else's. Tony calls Dante and states that he will not complete the job. He has reached his limit with the violent tasks Dante keeps assigning him. The moment the call ends, Dante sends 2 of his men to fire into Tony's house, although he warns them not to harm the family. A few hours later, Tony arrives home and urges his daughters to pack their things so they can leave immediately. But before they can escape, the 2 gunmen open fire on the house. In the chaos, one of them deliberately targets Tony's older daughter. Police and emergency services eventually arrive, but it is too late. Tony's eldest daughter does not survive. Roman appears at the scene and offers his condolences. Tony, consumed with grief and fury, vows to take revenge on Dante and his entire organization. The story then shifts back to Dante, who is interrogating the gunman responsible. He learns that the man ignored orders and intentionally shot Tony's daughter. Dante had feared that harming Tony's family would push Tony over the edge, and now that fear has become reality. Enraged, Dante kills the man on the spot. He then orders the rest of his crew to hunt Tony down before Tony comes after them. A few days pass and we see one of Dante's men preparing for a drug deal. Before the transaction can happen, Tony suddenly appears and brutally takes him down, leaving the man dead on the spot.
Remember me?
Tony has begun his path of vengeance. Meanwhile, Roman visits Agnes at her bar. He wants to know where he can find Tony. Agnes explains that Tony disappeared after his daughter's death and has not been seen since. Roman does not fully believe her, so he reveals that he shares the same vendetta. Dante took someone important from him too, and he wants Agnes to pass along a message. If Tony resurfaces, Roman hopes they can join forces and bring Dante's empire crashing down together. The story returns to Tony, who has now tracked down one of Dante's clubs. Without hesitation, he storms inside and wipes out several of Dante's men.
Who the fuck are you?
When he is done, he looks straight into a security camera and delivers a clear warning that he is coming for Dante next, no matter what it takes. 3 hours later, Agnes hears a noise in her kitchen. It is Tony. She tells him that his younger daughter keeps asking for him and is now staying at her house. Tony explains that he cannot see her yet, not until his revenge is complete. Agnes then mentions that Roman wants to work with him since they share the same enemy. Tony agrees and tells her to send Roman to the auto shop the following night. The next day, Dante enters a club owned by one of his partners, unaware that Tony's already watching. Inside, Dante collects money from drug sales while Tony slips in and attacks the guards. He takes down several men, but Dante and the remaining crew escape through a side exit before Tony can reach them. Later that night, Roman arrives at the shop to meet Tony. He opens up about his past, explaining that the partner killed in the film's opening scene was someone he considered a brother. Dante was responsible for that loss, and Roman has been hunting him ever since. Tony agrees to team up, although there is one major challenge. Dante constantly moves his base of operations. Roman promises to keep searching until he finds the location. Their conversation is cut short when a group of Dante's men suddenly launches an attack on the shop. The ambush is chaotic, and the attackers eventually flee. One of Tony's employees is hit by gunfire. Emergency responders arrive quickly and rush him to the hospital. The next day, Eduardo, Tony's trusted mechanic, is seen modifying a car with help from his team. No one says exactly what the vehicle is for, but it is clear they are preparing something important. The scene shifts to one of Dante's top enforcers entering a bar restroom. Inside, Tony is quietly washing his hands. The enforcer is ready for a fight, and without hesitation, the two clash in a brutal hand-to-hand brawl. At first, Tony is pushed into a corner, struggling against the much stronger opponent. But Tony adapts quickly. He grabs an exposed electrical cable overhead and presses it against the enforcer until he collapses lifeless on the floor. At the same time, Bobby is still being tortured by Dante. Even through the pain, he believes Tony will eventually track Dante down and put an end to all of this. The following day, Eduardo meets Tony, who is sitting alone, lost in his thoughts. Eduardo brings him back to the shop to show him something special. He and the team have finished the modified car. It is bulletproof and equipped with advanced features designed to survive a full-scale assault. Right then, Tony gets another call from Dante. He is ordered to come to Dante's new base the next night. If he refuses, Bobby will be killed. The next evening, Tony meets with Eduardo and the rest of the mechanics. He thanks them sincerely for everything they have done and promises he will never forget their help. With the car ready, Tony prepares to head out and finally settle things with Dante. Before he can leave, Roman appears, having learned about the upcoming confrontation. He insists on joining Tony. Tony and Roman arrive outside Dante's compound. The guards quickly react when they see the heavily modified car and launch a full attack. But the vehicle performs exactly as designed. With Eduardo providing remote support, the car fires back and tears through the opposition, clearing dozens of armed men. Once the entrance is secure, Tony and Roman step out and split up to search for Dante inside the compound. Tony fights his way forward with nothing but a wrench, taking on several of Dante's men. Roman battles his own wave of attackers, pushing deeper into the stronghold. The scene shifts to Bobby, still held captive in a small room. Quietly and patiently, he works at the ropes around his wrists, trying to slip free without being noticed. When he finally breaks loose, he wastes no time. He attacks the guard watching him, takes him down, and pushes his way out of the room, only to face more of Dante's men waiting outside. We move back to Tony and Roman, who are still fighting through the lower level of the compound. After clearing the floor, they make their way upstairs. Along the way, Tony encounters Dante's female lieutenant. It looks like the fight might be drawn out, but Tony ends it in an instant by throwing her over the railing. Just as Tony turns to leave, Dante suddenly appears with a gun pointed at him. He is furious that Tony has brought his empire to the brink of collapse. But before Dante can pull the trigger, a shot rings out. Dante falls and the bullet came from Bobby, who has finally fought his way to them. He apologizes to Tony for everything that happened, believing the chaos began because of him. Tony reassures him through his actions that none of that matters now. What matters is that Dante is gone and they survived. A few days later, Tony and his younger daughter visit Roman. Roman thanks Tony for helping him settle his own score with Dante. Tony insists he is the one who should be grateful. In the final moments, we see Tony, Agnes, and his daughter heading home together. Tony and Agnes have decided to get married and begin a new chapter after everything they have endured. The story comes to a close. So the moral of the story is never borrow your sibling's stolen Ferrari unless you enjoy explosions, gang fights, and accidentally starting a one-man war.